and what are the things that we covered through the practical sessions. Mostly I'll upload all the practicals that we have done so far in the Moodle. I have to locate that correct project and I have to upload. I'll upload within next week time. By next week I'll upload. So today we'll have a quick. So I'll go through only the important areas. I won't cover everything that we have covered before. If you have any doubt, like you can interrupt and ask, okay? So these things, I think you hope you have already know this, the basic structure of the C# programming and what each lines mean, namespace, class names and arguments, method displaying, likewise, and comments, you know, multi-line comments are there. So why we put comments? Maybe a question in your exam. Can you remember why we add comments in the program?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Sir.
Hello?
Sir.
Yeah. Why we add comments?
To understand what done in the codes to the next next person or the programmer, like that.
Even the one who develop the program might forget in 3-6 months time what he has done. So comments improves the readability and understandability. So there are a few lines and one multi-line comments, single line and XML documentation comments. So these are small things. And namespace, I actually explained several practicals in the namespace, implicit declaration and explicit declaration. Explicit declaration in implicit declaration in the sense you do it in the top in using this using keyword, and explicit you mention it with the method or wherever you need, like this system.math.square. So this kind of will be this kind of namespace declaration will be explicit ones. And data type variable, you know how to define a variable, how to initiate it. And value type and reference type, what is the difference, do you know? Data types and the value types, sorry, reference type, value type and the reference type. Do you know what? Hello?
Sir?
Okay, you are there, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I thought. Brinda, do you know value types and reference type? Value types directly store the value, but reference type variables store the memory address of where actually the variable is stored, and that is they directly stores the variable value in memory. They are unsigned and signed. Unsigned mean we are not mentioning minus or no negative or positive value. Signed we are mentioning. Floating float, double, decimal. There are three types of floating. Variable, decimal we mostly use. Character type. This means if you want to mention a single character that you can mention using char keyword. And Boolean is to mention true or false. Enum is to declare numbers for each variable name, or each value you define a number. For Monday you define 1, Tuesday you define 2. So likewise, in order to have a set of keywords and in order to have equal numbers for that value, you have enum. And the struct is it's a kind of a simple class. It's same as the class, but when it comes, it's it typically used to encapsulate small group of related variables. Like when it comes to rectangle, you store there the height and width likewise. So it's a simple set of variable declaration. You are not going to use that much. It's a kind of a pattern that you are going to create for object or entity like us. So that pattern you can repeat. So it's called struct, and we have done practicals. I actually will find this practical that I have done. I do have it in my other laptop. So once I find it, or like I'll redo the application and I'll upload it for the class and stuff. These are the different that these might be tested during your exams. So structs cannot have default constructor. That means you have to have parameterized constructor, and struct is a value type and referent class is a referent type. So this is also value type in the sense it actually store the value in the memory directly. Rather, this one classes to the reference point. This one is very important. Struct can be initiated without using new operator. Without defining the new, you can create the object of the struct. It's not an object, but it's a, you can instantiate the struct. This cannot inherit from another struct. That means you can't create, that means you can't create struct called vehicle, and you can't inherit another struct code. You can't create another struct called class, and you can't inherit from vehicle class. So that inheritance is not there. So this is the referent data types will contain a memory address of the variable. Won't store the value directly in the memory. Instead stores the address where the variable is. Okay. Statement keywords. These are the if else we have done. Switch. Why do we use switch? What is the purpose of switch statement? So switch is also similar to the class, similar to the if and else. You can use switch. When you use switch, you use the case. Okay. If in a if condition like as you use if else, you use switch and case together. Do you remember do? Where we use do? For each, it's a kind of a looping means what we call looping statements, and while, and do we use with the while, do while, or you can use without do while also. Do while, when we look at the while and the do while difference, do while, the first statement, first loop, first iteration will be executed anyway. When it comes to while loop, even the first will be checked for the condition whether it is satisfying. In the do while, it will be executed without even checking the condition in the first step. Break, in order to uh, break a statement, that means if you are in a for loop, if something satisfies, you can break that for loop at that point. Continue, default, return, like whenever you return a value from the method, in order to return it, you use return. Try catch you use in the exception handling. Throw, you use exception in exception handling. Base and this you use in the class and inheritance concept. These are type keywords, double floats and all. Okay. Access modifier, public, private. Public, private, and internal and protected. So public, you can access something, a variable or method from anywhere within the program. Private, restrict something to be accessed within the class the variable is. Internal, from the same assembly other program you can access it. So if that will be the default modifier if you have mentioned nothing, if you have not mentioned anything. So protected allows the codes in the same class or class that derives from that class to be accessed, the type of its members. So in order to have a protected gives the access only to the same class or the class, to the child class. Okay. If you use protected, it won't give access to some other classes if you use protected. You can use protected internal also. That means it gives the class to derived class as well as some class derived class from different SM. So you can use this protected internal together also. So these are we use in order to create object override. We use static to define a variable uh, which doesn't change. With static and constant is similar, uh, which will be used and which will not be changed throughout the program. Or like static can be common to any object. It will not be like when you have static variable, the value will be same for all the objects, and constant it won't change. So you use static constant together, and virtual, like yesterday we actually looked at, from virtual method you can override the methods or variables. So these are the way we define array, and how we define array. Array declaration with size, array declaration with values, and even without the size, we can directly assign the values to the array. Yesterday we looked at the multi-dimensional array. So selection statement, do you know the ternary? I think I've taught all this ternary and switch if else. Ternary, like you do it in one single line. You put a question mark and check if it's satisfied. It's a way of, it's a kind of a different way of doing the same thing. if else and all. If like you can do using ternary, you can replace what you do using if else. So in the ternary, it will be one single line. So these are the iteration statements. For each, while, do, while. I've explained. So this is the external access modifier structure. You can go through and see. Private, that means the class only. Contains, you can have it, define it. Protected in the sense of class, in the same class, for the class deriving from that class. Internal in the same assembly, and protected in the same assembly, and also the derived class. Public every there you can access, give access. Same thing repeated in the service. So object-oriented paradigm is uh, categorized into three, which is analysis and design and programming. Analysis in the sense you actually find out what are the entities and what are the classes that you require in order to solve a problem. Okay, and you find out all the requirements and how you can solve it using the classes, and you um, find out the classes that you require. In object-oriented design, you actually map each classes, how it relates to one to another, and it's a way of conceptualization, and how you see how the classes will be implemented, what are the variable it is needed, what are the methods it requires, and all. So here, like it's a way of designing object-oriented design. It's a kind of a way of defining use design. Also using designing using this visualization tools, UML and all. And every single system is best approach choose most. I think this slide is not right. So this is when it comes to designing only. I've gone in detail uh, how the each person would see the system. Analyze designer see the logical weave, and programmers see the implementation, and system integrators see the process, and system engineering see the deployment weave. So all these weaves can be uh, designed through multiple UML diagrams. So these are the UML diagrams that, as per the requirement, we have to decide what are the diagrams that we would need to complete something, to complete the requirement, to visualize the requirement in the object-oriented designing phase. So I think this might be tested during your assignments. If so, we can, if it is tested, or if they have something, we can take some examples, and I can show you how each diagram we design. Have you worked? I have not explained much on this since the course didn't enforce these things. Have you designed these things before in any other subjects? Have you Done? No, some
Only use case diagram.
only use case.
Yes, sir.
Classes, class diagram, not
No, sir.
sequence also no, right?
No, sir.
Yeah, I have to add sequence diagram. It is not there. Ah, right. It's there. Sequence diagram and communication diagram. So basically, use case diagram, right? It will be used mostly, and class diagram mostly the developers do, and sequence and the communication will be done by basically a person or someone. Activity also could be like it's based on the requirement. We'll see if the in the assignment if we have come across anything, any requirement like this one. I'll explain. I'll take two, three charts, two, three diagrams, and explain you. Okay, uh, because it is not the major part in our syllabus. It's just I have added this thing. Modularity. It's like you are breaking the program into several parts and you do one by one and integrate later. So it's modularized. That means that module should be reused in another component. So when it comes to, so let me ask you a question. So let's say you log in, you are going to use any e-commerce system. Let's say if you are going to use any e-commerce system, what is the most common part that you see in almost all the e-commerce system? What is the most common part? I got from I think you know most like many e-commerce system that I use in Sri Lanka. What is the most common part that you see in e-commerce system?
Product display, sir.
Okay. So the product display also could be different uh, by company to company based on the product portfolio, right? If it's a vegetable, we are not going to show the. If nowadays skills is focusing on the online platform, their focus is not to show the vegetable in 360 or like that, right? It's just a list. So the product, yeah, product showcase product. What they offer is showing is the requirement, but most of the e-commerce that you use will have a login and registration, right? Every e-commerce will have a registration and login because they want to get the verified details of you. So that kind of like, let's say if you are a if you are into software development or if you are working for software company, what they mostly do is that user management and mostly the uh, cart that what we call weave cart function and checkout function is not mostly not going to be changed. So what they do is they do as a module, user management as a separate module and weave cart as a separate module. They build as a different modules in the uh, while developing the program, and they ensure that same module can be used by any of the system they are going to do in future. Let's say they have developed a system, e-commerce system for Keels, which has a user management, user login and all. And if they want to sell that to Softlogic supermarket, they can actually integrate the same thing that they have done for the Keels. So that is the main advantage of having modularity concept. Give me a second. So you break into modules and you develop and you make sure each module works separately and work independently. So this is the one of the example for the student. So object-oriented programming is the last paradigm of that last thing of that paradigm where you start this the phase where you start developing. Okay, and objects will have data and methods. So data will be the variable that we declare each time properties, and methods is the function you know. So object is basically a combination of data and method. What's the difference between object and the class? That could be tested in your online exam. What is the difference between the object and the class? No one knows. So object is a real world entity that you create out of the class. So our class remains as a blueprint or the structure that uh, supports the creation of object. So object rather we call as a real world entity, and class is a template kind of a thing. So object oriented program rather focus on objects, not the objects you create, not the data or the on data rather than the procedure. So data can be hidden using several things that access modifiers and all. Benefits of OOP: secure using the access modifier things, and eliminate redundant code using inheritance or whatever the other concept, and easy upgrading. That means you can scale the project. Let's say you created a student management system with 5 class, and if you want to integrate that to, let's say, a payment system. Let's say the students are going to now pay through card, so the system should handle the payment also. So that in that case, like if you have developed the you using OOP, that can be easily scalable because you create the classes that you want for the payment system, and to integrate in the same module or a different module in the same application. So simple interfaces and those kind of things are the benefits you can walk through. So object is the real entity. It could be a real entity like person or plane or something that is imaginary. And classes and objects are the blueprint of an object. So these data we call properties, and these function we call methods. So class is a combination of property and method. You should not forget this, how you create object out of the class, the way method. So classes versus instance. In the sense, instance is an object that you create, but class is the blueprint. So that is the same thing in detail here. An interface, it acts as an interface of the class where you have the connection between the implementation and the requesting object. Uh, then when it comes to object-oriented analysis in detail, so it's noun analysis, use case analysis, and CRC method analysis can be used to identify the object in the problem, what are the objects that we need to have in the program based on the requirement or based on the problems. Okay. So this is the next thing. Give me a second. Give me a minute. Okay. So this is the step that how we identify the um, or classes in the problem or something, or in the requirement. So we can identify the objects in our problem statement by looking for nouns and noun phrases. Like if this the kind of requirement, you actually might identify noun and you then remove the redundant like. So these are the rules to reduce. Let's say all the nouns cannot be taken if it's a redundant, vague, and event and operation out of scope of the system, meta language and attribute that you can identify and then remove and take only the required thing. And some this kind of a ID card number will be an attribute. Likewise, it will be a data of a class, but it will not be a class actually. So you actually identify the nouns and you filter out through those process. I hope you remember these things so you can read out and see how each object is identified in this case. Sometimes these might be testers, this kind, I'm not sure, but there could be there might be a possibility that you will be tested on these, like you will be given in an online platform and identify the classes or else the objects for this kind of a requirement. So using use case also you can identify. First you draw the use case and find out the classes, CRC method, what's the responsibility. So those things you can go through actually. So when it comes to extraction and encapsulation, these are the major object-oriented concepts. So in abstractions, you actually identify the essential characters of an object that will be a different thing, that will be the unique thing from the other objects. And so this is the place where you remove some remove characteristic from something in order to reduce to a set of essential characteristics. You don't have all the things required for the class or object. You actually find out based on the requirement what you need, what is very essential when it comes to the solution. So uh, for an example, in a student management system, it's no point of storing students' father's birthplace or something in a student. It's not a birth certificate you are going to do, right? So where you can remove unnecessary things. You are not going to store your mother's education thing. That might be irrelevant when it comes to student management system. Likewise, you have to find out what are the required things in there for the particular object. And encapsulation, so these are the main things that small examples you can go through. Encapsulation is basically uh, creating a structure uh, which is secured, which is encapsulated. That means grouped together and hidden from hidden, like the implementation will be hidden to the outsiders. So that is what encapsulation means. Encapsulation is the process of compartmentalizing the elements of an abstraction that constitutes structure. That's the theoretical thing. So basically, it means the grouping of related attributes and methods together and giving the name to unit and providing interface for outsiders to communicate with the unit. And so it eliminates direct dependencies. You when you define variable, you can define. Do you remember the way we defined the variable uh, private get set using get set? Uh, if set is not defined, that means that variable you can't assign a value. If get is not there for that particular variable, you can't uh, read that value. So you can, if you have used private set, then that means you can only define within the class. So likewise, using get set of a variable, you can define how it is protected, how it is going to be protected, and how it is going to be used. So using access modifier, like this one, information and implementation hidings both hand in hand with the encapsulation concept. Basically, both eventually has the same purpose. And you have access modifier, as I told before, in order to protect the information. So function oriented do not return a state, but an object on the other hand is aware of its past and maintains state across the method. If you have a variable, or let's say you in an object, you can store the state of for the object, and you refer that object at any time you want, and you can remain that state. You can object is like state retention, because so when you have created the object, that will be remained until it's removed from the memory or some removed from the memory. The soap state will remain when it comes to object. Message passing in the sense like communicating with other or classes and all. Inheritance is like getting the child class getting the qualities from the parent class. Polymorphism that we looked yesterday, one of the polymorphism is the overriding, and overloading is the another one. What is the difference between overriding and overloading? Do you remember what's the difference between overriding and overloading? Don't you know?
So overriding means we putting a code above one code. Sir,
Yeah.
overloading is we overloading the same code again and again.
Overloading is actually this. You use the same method name, but the parameters or the parameter signature is going to be different. Signature in the sense that how many parameters for the same method name, or the like. Even if you have collapsed the parameter, let's say you have a variable called yes, let's say it's a method called calculate distance, like yesterday. So first in the calculate distance method, you mention integer, int, speed, and string brand as the parameter in one method, calculate distance. The same method you are defining calculate distance, the parameter signature is going to be different. You have in the second method 3 parameters, so else you have the 2 parameters, but the order is going to be different. Let's say string brand is going to be in the first, and integer speed is going to be the second parameter. So that is the same different method. It will be considered as two different method, even though that has two same method name. Overriding in the sense you have the same method name, you have the same set of parameters, say in the same order, but it will be used in the child classes. So it will be mostly used in the that means overriding is actually like you define something in the parent class in override virtual method, and you actually change that implementation in the in a derived class, but you still use the same method and the same parameter order and parameter signature. So that is the difference between the overriding and overloading. And inheritance, deriving the class, actually creating child class from the parent class. So this is how we create. This is how the I think I've explained this in details, proving how it works and what are the qualities that's what are the qualities that lecturer class now have. What are the things lecturer class now have in this case? What are the qualities?
Sorry, sir.
What are the things that is applicable for the lecturer class now in this slide?
First
Base,
name, last name, date of birth, and the lecturer's string department.
yeah, whatever available in the person name, person class, and also the lecturer class will be applicable for the lecturer. And student will be in the same way, but student will not consume anything from the lecturer class. Polymorphism, you can look that. So I have mentioned the difference there. And what else? I think you were not there during this testing class, no? Software testing, Ramya?
Sorry, sir.
Did you attend this lectures, software testing one?
No, sir.
No. Uh, so I'll quickly go through that. I think you since you have a different subject for this, I don't. So what is the purpose of software testing?
To identify whether the software has any bugs.
Yeah, it's actually to find out any defects in the program, and also the most uh, main important thing is whether it meets the client's requirement or the requirement given for the software. Both demonstrate the software meets requirement, and identifying the defects is the major objectives of software testing. So that's a process. I think you know this design test case and test prepare the test data and run the program with test data and compare the results with the test case. To the test case, you define the expected outcome and the actual outcome. So that's the process. I think you can go through it. Functional, non-functional, and maintain testing are the three main categories. What is black box testing and what is white box testing? Do you know about black box testing and white box testing? So with black box testing, you are not, the testing person is not allowed to test the implementation, that means the codes. Rather, he checks whether the system meets the requirement that are specified, and actually that he actually do the functional, whether the program, the software meets the functional requirement, and the functionality of the functionality of the system is tested. Black box, you give the input and get the outputs and see whether it meets the actual expected. So actual thing is matching with the expected outcome. So testing, white box testing, that means that you test the codes, whether that have been written correctly, whether that code is up to the standard and do not have a, like, improper syntaxes or classes, and whether it is identify if it is giving wrong results using the code. So you actually go through the codes and identify whether it works properly. So it's basically happen in the stage of unit testing and the integration system levels, integration and system testing levels. So the objective is to exercise all the program statements. White box testing. Integrations, basically you do when a system is integrated. Let's say you have program A and B, modules A and B. Like once you integrate modules A with B, you test both together whether it works properly. You test individually module A and B, and also once you integrated module A and B, you again test it whether together the pro application is working as we require. So this the chart, I think, yeah. When you have A B, you test T1, T2, T3, and once you plug in when you have incorporated C module C, you again do the T1, T2, T3, and T4. So while once you integrated, you can't skip this T1, T2, T3, you have to do it again. Likewise, when you integrated D, you have to test the new things as well as the old test cases also. The stress testing, in the sense like you if a system is a kind of a critical system, let's say it's a telecommunication or kind of a system that has the limitation on these many messages can be sent in a second, or this can be these many number of calls that can be taken concurrently by the network users, then you actually do the stress testing in order to identify that how many it actually gives. Let's say if you can send 50, you expect 50 SMS per second, and you actually send and test 70 SMSs per second whether it is working. You actually go beyond the maximum of the design of the maximum of the system capable of, and test whether it is working, whether it is properly responding even during the stress scenarios. That means something, you give more load into that application and see whether it's working. Test plan, in the sense it's basically a document, okay? Basically document derived from the SRS, FRS, and FSD. Do you know what does SRS, FRS means? I'm not sure whether you will be asked in your assignment these things to be created. Have you done SRS for other subjects?
We have done SRS for the software testing subject,
Okay.
software requirement specification.
In the software testing subject, you have done it.
Yes, sir.
You done it in the class. That means lecturer taught you or you done it for a project actually? Oh,
Sorry, sir?
it was a part of lecturing or you did it for a project actually?
No, sir, it's part of a lecturing.
Apply. Okay. So SRS is mostly like it covers the entire system specification. Okay, it will include hardware thing and architecture diagram, how it's going to be used, functional requirement. FRS is basically functional requirement specification. You mostly focus on the functional things only. FSD is also similar to FRS, but it's a kind of different name. SRS, FRS, FSD, mostly those three things are similar nowadays. SRS, they won't go in detailing in the software company. So if they just mention this function requirement. So actually the test plan will be derived from these documents. So based on the requirement, you define what are the things to be tested and uh, what are the things that are specific for the particular project you, and it will be created by test leads, and it will be identified as super document because it has all the details, who are going to test what, and in what time the testing is going to be started, and who is going to be handled. Like one, let's say one person is, if one person is leaving from the company, who will be replaced, who will be replacing him, and what are the timeline for that kind of persons, and all those things are considered in the planning. So it's a kind of a super document. Even this document can be used by other project. This, the out of the test plan you create, the next thing that you create is test strategy. So the test strategy is like what are the tests you are going to do, and it is a kind of a part of the test plan. So test plan is a big document which is specific to the project. Test strategy is a small document where you define how this testing is going to be handled, whether you create the test cases or do something else, or whether you create the test data, how you going to create the test data, and all will be defined in the test strategy. So the strategies can be used by many, like this strategy can be applied to multiple projects. It is not be stick to one project only, but it can be used by several projects. Test cases, actually you define steps to proceed the test, and it is done manually in the manual testing environment, and you actually uh, have the test through type. Let's say it's kind of an Excel sheet that most companies doing. You mention the ID of the test, and it's just an ID, and test data, what is the procedure, and actual result, and expected result. Okay, so this is followed by the QA person, done by QA person, and they keep this as the checklist in order to do all the tests. So these are the other things that these things are not much required. Like as I mentioned before, requirements and specification, for that we use that multiple documents as I told before, SRS, FSD, and FRS. User manual and technical documentation. It's like what once you build the system, you provide that to user, how the system is going to be used, what is each feature means, and the technically it explain all the features also. So it's a kind of a document you prepare out after the uh, for the deployment of the system at the client place, after the implementation of the system rather. Okay. So that's all small things that I have to cover in the testing. So linked list is actually like it's what is the difference between linked list and the array? Major difference. In linked list, like in array, you actually define the size of the array. But in linked list, when it comes to linked list, you don't mention the size of the array. You can create in the size that you want. You can add as you want. You can remove from any place, and likewise. So it will have a data and the node. That means it will store the data and also it stores the reference to the next or the previous link item in the list. So the first will be considered as a sync add node, and the last will be considered the first will be considered add node, and in singly linked list the next of the last list item, the linked list item will be having the null value. Doubly in the sense like you have previous and next nodes, and previous will store the previous. Let's say if you consider this node particularly, the previous will store uh, the reference, that means the memory address of uh, previous node, and in this particular node the next will store this particular node's address. Circular linked list in the sense you have the linked list in a circular way where the last one will be connected to the head node. So each node will not, that means finally no nodes will have the null value. So each node will be filled. So this is the circular linked list. An array list we look, you create the values in the array list where we don't need the sizes also. And hash table, you create the hash table values with the keyword and the value. So if you create the hash table, you create the keyword. If you add an item to hash table, you create the keyword and also the value. So it's a key value pair we call the hash table. Exception handling, we actually looked at how we use the exception handling, how we use try and catch, and finally blocks and all. Give me 1 second. Give me 2 minutes. Okay, I'll come back. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, I have to send a message. So this is about the exception handling, and basic. I don't think that is required at this moment. Some slides are missing. Introduction. Any doubts so far? The .NET framework that we recently did, framework and versions,
No,
compilers. What about you, Brinda? Brinda is there, right? So this is about the .NET framework, and since we have done very recently the CLR, what is .NET architecture, you can go through the slides. I think you will, you can recall everything. Uh, then let me check this as well. I'll upload the small projects that we have done in the classroom and upload it to the Moodle.
okay.
Any questions do you have? Have you find the Brinda is also going to do the final year project, right, with you?
Yes, sir.
You three are going to do, right, anyway?
Yes.
Others not, right? Others are first year, right? They belong.
Yes, sir.
Any other things? Any question?
No, sir.
So let me know, like, if you find a project for the final year, I think I can help out. Like I inform Nishantan that I've covered all the things that required for this course, and he told that he would tell me what the next step. Okay, so he might inform to you who are here, and as I think, and uh, at least during the discussion session of the assignment or the project or final year project or whatever your assignment, both everyone will going to have, but final year projects, I think only those projects are only for you three. So if it when it comes to assignment discussion, I feel like better if everyone is there, so I can't explain uh, in several classes that the same thing. So I once I get from Nishant, then I'll go through and see what is the requirement from the assignment perspective, and I'll let you know. I'll fix a class if he gives a gives it to me before next week, so we can discuss on the next weekend classes. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Meantime, if you have any discussion, you can ask me during this time, or you can always send me a message. Okay, during a final year project or anything. But probably we'll have the discussion on Saturday or Sunday morning. Okay, for that things. Like if you need any more help, any help. Okay.
Okay, sir.
That's all from my side. So since I've gone through this very briefly, many things I've explained through these practicals, the namespace and all the class library things. So I can't do it again. I will actually upload these slides, so these projects. Okay. Okay then. I'll go through and upload the projects, required projects.
Okay, sir.
Then see you. I'll talk to Nishanthan and find out how the assignment going to work. Okay, bye.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.